Welcome to the Humanities Team podcast with me, Steve Farrell. Humanities Team is an international spiritual movement whose purpose is to communicate and demonstrate the timeless truth that we are all one, with the divine and all life, caring for each other and the world we share, so that people's actions reflect this profound understanding within our generation. We believe that living this truth is essential to resolving the most chronic and acute world challenges and vital to creating a flourishing world of peace, harmony, and happiness. We offer transformative education programs in personal and spiritual development, and we host an annual event called Global Oneness Day. Similar to Earth Day, which galvanized the global environmental movement, Global Oneness Day has become a catalyst for spiritual activism and an integral part of the present-day global oneness movement, which represents a profound new paradigm in human culture. Humanities Team is the only global nonprofit organization working in transformational education. Since we are a nonprofit, there is no focus on growing profits or satisfying shareholders, and 100% of all revenue goes toward our work supporting conscious evolution, planetary awakening, and flourishing at every level of life. If you'd like to learn more about us or want to support our mission directly through donation or volunteering some of your time, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org. And lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, we'd be grateful if you'd leave us a review.
Nathan Crane is an award-winning author, inspirational speaker, and conscious filmmaker dedicated to creating a healthy and sustainable Earth. From addiction, dependency, jail, and homelessness to a profound spiritual awakening, Nathan is a highly sought-after international entrepreneur focused on personal empowerment. Nathan found his life's purpose in helping people experience more health, joy, and fulfillment in their lives, dissolving harmful habits and mental attachments, and experiencing physical, mental, emotional, financial, and spiritual transformation. Nathan is the president and CEO of Integrative Health International and also the founder of the Panacea Community. He is the director and producer of a documentary called The Search for Sustainability and is helping to organize something called Unify Fest later this year. Nathan helps people and their families experience higher levels of health, happiness, and fulfillment through programs and experiences. You can learn more about Nathan and his projects at nathancrane.com and unifyfest.com. Welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit, Nathan. It's great to have you with us.
Steve, thank you so much. I really appreciate the introduction, and I truly am honored and really happy to be here with you on this wonderful day. This is a beautiful day here in Santa Fe, and I love this program you've put together. It's definitely a topic that is very close to me in my practices, in my research, in my daily life as I experiment and learn and grow every day to become closer and closer to spirit and to the divine. So thank you for organizing this, and I'm deeply grateful for being a part of it.
You bet. Well, thank you, Nathan. Yeah, as I mentioned before this program, gosh, all of us and Humanities Team have been real excited about this program. We're going to get to know you better through this hour. We love all of the things that you're up to. Nathan, I thought a good place to start might be with your personal story because it's so powerful. These things that you experienced that I mentioned in your introduction, homelessness, jail, dependency, and then rising from that, and you're a young person today, to the level of conscious leadership that you've attained. Wow. Can you just share a little bit about that, about your personal story as we get started?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to condense it because sometimes it feels like I've lived 5 or 6 lifetimes in this one life so far, and it could be a few books full of stories. And many of them are even hard for me to believe sometimes. I'm sure everyone listening has had that kind of transformational experience in their life where, you're living one way and some major shifts happen, and a few years later, you're a completely different person. And I think that's really valuable for each of us to know and to understand about ourselves, that if we're not changing, then we're staying stagnant and we're not growing. And so growing and changing and transformation and having, shedding old skin and having new ideas, new beliefs, new experiences in our life is really valuable, and I think we need to honor that. I think sometimes we kind of forget that we're supposed to change over time, and it's really, I want to honor that in everybody who's listening and honor it in myself, because as a kid, I was very lost. I was very confused. I grew up in a broken family. At 15, I ended up living on the streets. I ended up addicted to drugs, to alcohol, ended up addicted to cigarettes, and I was put in jail and on house arrest at that age as well as a teenager, in and out of the courtrooms, in and on, on and off probation. I remember a quick little story. I went in to, I think I was 15 or 16, and I was put on probation for the first time. And I went in, and my probation officer pulled out my file, and it was like a little manila folder with 2 pages in it. And he said, this is your folder. And then he pulled out another kid's folder that was like as thick as a ream of paper. And he slammed it on the table. It was quite heavy, and it made a very loud crash. And he said, this is somebody else's folder who is not following our program, who's not following the rules. Because you don't want to be like this person. You want to keep your folder very thin like the one you have. And, that didn't mean much to me at that time, being very adventurous and very, courageous in many ways, and also very stupid. A few years later, I went in, and I remember he pulled out my folder, and it was twice as thick as that first folder that I saw of that other kid that I wasn't supposed to be like. And that was a really kind of shocking moment for me. It was one of those, early shocking moments that was a little bit eye-opening. It, started making me question, like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Why am I in so much trouble? Why am I, experiencing all this suffering? Because it was really a lot of pain and suffering, and not having much, spiritual guidance, feeling completely lost in school. I didn't feel connected to the systems of school or the systems of society or the systems of law or governance at all. I felt like they were incomplete or very judgmental or, non-embracive for someone like me who, I wasn't a kid that could sit down in an hour class and listen to a topic I had no interest in. My mind was more, it wanted to adventure, experience, do creative things. And so that got me into a lot of trouble. Anybody else who had that kind of creative, energetic mind as a kid, I think, can understand that. And I think a lot of our kids today are suffering that exact same thing where, they're stuck in a system that's not designed for their minds. And the only option that is recommended in many cases is to put them on drugs to quiet them down and dumb them down so they can sit through that hour-long class. Well, I look at my daughter now, who's 5 years old, incredibly healthy, has incredible brilliance, and is very wise at her age. And I can see that same creativity, that same spontaneity, that same desire to want to learn and have fun and paint and draw and all these things. And the school she's in right now, it's just a preschool, right? Because she missed the cutoff for the first kindergarten, I think it was this year. She was a month off. But, in her school, that's what they do. They really focus on helping to both bridge the left and right hemispheres of the brain, but also to really encourage that creativity, the painting, the drawing, the playing outside, those things that as we typically go up in age and up in grade in school, they tend to get away from, and they get more into the linear mind, the science, the hard science, the data, the math, the hour-long classes, which is all fine. But for me, it didn't work. And I was really rebellious to all of it. I didn't really understand that rebellion. And I was seeking pleasure. I was seeking to get out of that suffering and that, continuous scolding and, being told that I was no good or, had no value or I didn't fit in or those kinds of things. And so, that led me to, and I always hung out with the older crowd. I was always, all my friends were always twice my age or 3 times my age, and I ended up getting involved with the kids that were doing drugs and drinking and partying. So that was a part of my life until I was about 18 years old. And when I was 18, I had this epiphany, this really, I would probably say one of my first early conscious, that I was very conscious of visions with spirit. And it was a vision of myself in the future. And in that moment, it gave me hope for possibility because I didn't think there was any other life than what I was living. I grew up on, MTV and The Simpsons and these really bad shows that teach kids terrible things. And, I thought the way I was living was all there was. This vision inspired me, and within a couple of months, I packed everything into my 1988 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, which I just had a couple of suitcases, and drove down to California, ran out of gas in Oceanside, and that's where I started my life over. And
wow.
From there, it was quite a journey from there going forward.
Yeah, and there was obviously, was that the big turning point? You said start over there in Oceanside, California. So, Nathan, as you were starting to put down roots then in California, was this where the turning point? And you mentioned epiphanies even as you became closer to spirit. Did your launch into conscious leadership happen there?
Yeah. So for me, it was very rare from about 12, 13 years old until I was 18 to be sober. And so, especially from about 15 to 18, I don't think I was sober more than a couple, maybe a day at a time ever. And so when I got in the car, I knew that's where I needed to go. I needed to get away from everything, change my life, start over, leave everything behind. I had a huge, hundreds of friends and there were 4 or 5 houses that we hung out at, and I was kind of the life of the party, you could say, hosting big 300, 400, 500 person parties and all that kind of stuff, and I left it all behind. I knew I needed to, and so when I drove to California, I was sober for the first time in a long time, and what had happened is I started experiencing the highness of consciousness in a sober state where I had no urge for any substance whatsoever. I felt so good. I felt so instantly transformed inside because I knew what I was supposed to do at that time, even though, I didn't really know anybody. In Southern California, my friend had an aunt and an uncle down there, and, I didn't have anybody down there. And, it was just this really exhilarating time for me of experiencing what it's like to be sober, and I call that getting high on consciousness. And now I experience it all the time, gratefully, and I don't need substance, and I haven't had any of those kinds of substances for many years now. But it was a big turning point, and I attracted a spiritual mentor into my life within about a year and a half after that, where I really started meditating hours and hours a day. I would walk the beach. I would sit and write. I have journals and journals of writing. I would just sit and practice meditation and focus on my breathing. I started studying with Buddhist monks and Hare Krishna and Tibetan monks, and started studying the Tao, and started studying some of Jesus' writings and Thomas's writings, and just really started immersing myself in this world of consciousness, of spirituality, of personal development, and I just knew, it took me a few more years to finally stop, drinking alcohol and smoking and all that stuff, and I really started focusing on my health, taking care of my body, understanding what it means to be healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and that has just been an amazing path for me, and I've just been blessed with being able to connect with and learn from directly with hundreds of, who we would consider, world-leading authors and spiritual teachers and mentors. I've had the opportunity to interview them, to sit and talk with them, to host and produce events that they speak at where I get to spend quality time with them. And then I started getting invited to speak, and I started writing books, and I started speaking all over the country at conferences and events and retreats. And all of a sudden, the people I was really looking up to and learning from, I was standing on the same stage as them and sharing, many of these things that I've learned. And so it's just, I think it's a blessing for all of us to look at, that no matter how deep in the trenches we are in our life, no matter what's going on in our relationships, our financial. I mean, I was homeless 3 times before I was 21 years old. And now I own my own home. So, the possibility for changing our life, for experiencing the divine, and for having a deeper sense of meaning and fulfillment and passion, it's available to every single person. But sometimes we have to get uncomfortable before we can get to that next level. And then that next level of our life often brings in levels of comfort. And if we stay in that realm of comfort for too long, things get stagnant. And that's what I say. We always need to be changing. I mean, I'm a totally different person now than I was a year ago. And I hope to be a totally different person a year from now, because I know that I'm on this upwards progression towards shedding away limiting thoughts and beliefs of scarcity and anger and fear, and getting closer and closer to the divine, which is really what this wonderful program you've put together is all about. It's about learning to live in oneness, learning to live in harmony with ourselves, with our neighbors, with our community, with the world, and with Spirit, with God, with the Creator, with whatever name you feel called to give to that source of life that emanates within all of us. And that's led me to many of these other projects, such as the Search for Sustainability and Unify Fest. It's these opportunities for each of us to really learn how to implement these things on a practical level, rather than only talk about it, but how to really make it pragmatic and very tangible in our lives. And that's always been my quest, and I think that's been one of the great things that has helped me to kind of, progress my life quickly in many ways, is that I'm a very practical person. And so when you say, go connect with God, I say how, I say where, I say when, I say, show me the way, I say, what's the fastest way, what's the best way. It's like I'm researching and experimenting, and I'm trying, and I'm, and sometimes the answer to that is just letting go and allowing that energy to emanate within ourselves.
Just surrendering, yeah.
And surrendering,
come in here. Gosh, let me just say, Nathan, your story is so inspiring, and I think you're such a model for youth and adults too. But it's such an inspiring story, because I think, I think it's hard sometimes to connect with people unless we've lived, the challenges ourselves. Otherwise, we're just talking as an academic, and sometimes our messages can feel empty when we're talking as an academic. And so, talking from this place of just lifting yourself up as you did, it's incredible. It's incredibly inspiring. And of course, you're happily married to a beautiful wife, and you've got a beautiful daughter, and so that's awesome. Nathan, I thought we could just talk about one of these things. Maybe first your book, because you wrote a book about self-reliance mastery. I'm guessing some of the things you're sharing now even maybe are key themes in the book. What can you share just briefly? What are some of the key things that you recommend to people in your book, Self-Reliance Mastery?
Well, one of the things I recognized on this journey of mine, as we focus on living a more harmonious life, a life closer to spirit, is that this kind of technocratic world that we live in, that we've created, oftentimes separates us from spirit. And it does it by separating us from the earth. And so I felt really called towards producing an online event where I interviewed different experts about self-reliance. And I wanted to focus, you hear self-reliance, and a lot of times you think survivalism. And that's kind of a lot of what's going on out there, which is fine. And, survival teachings has its place. But I saw a lot of that based on fear as well, as loading yourself up with ammunition and guns for the end of the world because everyone's going to come and steal all your food. And I'm not about that. I definitely believe and see, and I've actually been speaking about this for a few years now, that the systems we've created in society, they are not sustainable, and they simply cannot last forever. They are not indefinite. All systems which are not fully sustainable have to crash and or be replaced by a new system. And if we look at our education system, our financial system, the economic, political system, healthcare system, you can see it right now, not only in America but worldwide, that they are struggling heavily, simply because they were not built on strong, sustainable foundation. And in this technocratic life that we've created, we depend on large corporations to provide our food, large corporations to provide our clothing, large corporations to provide our shelter, and even, in many cases, large corporations or large organizations to provide our water. And, those are our basic, fundamental necessities for being able to at least live on the planet, right? Food, water, and shelter. Now, I often talk beyond that and say, community, connectedness with spirit, a purpose and passion and health. Those are just as important, but you can live without those. You can't live without those other three essential necessities. And as I started realizing this along my journey, I started realizing, wow, we're totally, as a society, at least here in America, are not self-reliant at all. Most people don't grow their food anymore. Most people definitely don't make their clothing or their shoes, the things that keep them warm. Most people don't have a little piece of land where they could even do that, and most people rent and don't even own their shelters, so they could be kicked out at any moment. And those are really important things that I think we should have as a society, that we always have had. A couple hundred years ago, all of our, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, most of them, going back at least 3 generations anyway, were pretty much self-reliant. They were canning their own foods. They were growing a lot of it, whether it was themselves or in a small community. Some of them were making their own clothing. The Industrial Revolution was starting, and so that was starting to manufacture a lot of those goods. But go back a few hundred years, and then all the way back to the beginning of time, as a human collective, for as long as we can go back, let's say hundreds of thousands of years, potentially longer, we've always been self-reliant. This is the first time in our human history, just in this last maybe 200, 300-year period, where we are totally not self-reliant. And it is actually something that is concerning. And so I wanted to produce an event where I interviewed different experts and discussed these topics of, how do we start to become more self-reliant? How do we take care of our medical needs in a very natural, self-reliant way? How do we think about starting to grow our own food? How do we think about community building and mindset skills and these kinds of things that give us that sense of security, a sense of confidence, and that sense of self-reliance? And again, also, when I talk about self-reliance, I'm not talking about going away in the mountains and bunkering yourself away from society. I think community is a really important part of self-reliance. But if you don't have skills of your own to provide to that community, then that community suffers. So each of us must learn to become self-reliant in our own ways with our own skills, and then we bring that into a community. And then that community thrives because we can exchange, then we have interdependence instead of dependence or independence. I think interdependence is really important. I think that's more in alignment with the intention of living in oneness and the intention of living closer to spirit, is that realizing, self-reliance and interdependence is realizing that interconnectedness with all of humanity, that yes, each of us have our individual self, and when we bring that into a community environment with skills and value, then we bring wonderful things to that community. So anyway, the interview...
Let me, Nathan, I'll come in here if I can, because that's a really important thing. I was thinking maybe we could segue to this, and I know as you're talking about your book, as you mentioned, you brought in the name of your documentary, The Search for Sustainability, and we can talk a little more about some of these themes too, which are fascinating. As you talk about just some of this is just this separation that's occurred between each of us, humanity, and the earth. So let me just come back to that. But this paradigm of oneness, because you were bringing that in here, this aspect of our connection with the earth and with the divine and each other, just to talk about that, because of course, this is the Living in Oneness Summit, and this paradigm has so powerfully influenced you during this program. And before the program, when we were chatting, you were sharing how your own awakening, has been so important and powerful in your life. So let's just talk about this paradigm of oneness a little bit. This aspect of living with, but not within, the illusion of separation. It's so easy. Where we see our physical bodies as separate and the earth as separate, to fall into this place of living within the illusion. And then, of course, we don't get to experience any of that magic that is what oneness is, and which is what connection is, that love and light and grace and miracle power that are the divines that is embodied and manifested in all of life, in each of us and the earth. Of course, it's a beautiful thing when we can come into that flow and live in that place of connection. But we also all experience, probably some of us much of the time, or all of the time, or at least some of the time, falling out of that connection, where we're within the illusion, and the miracle power of that love, light, grace, and miracle power is lost. So, what are just to go deeper down into this part, Nathan, what are the key things that you do that just really strengthen you and that are a part of your message, dealing specifically with oneness, with the divine and each other and all of life, as you're out speaking and working with people all over the world?
Sure. I'd love to answer that, and I'd love to read, before I do, I'd love to read a few sentences from a book I've been reading that is so powerful. It's just touched me in such a profound way that really speaks very well to exactly what you just said. The book is called Love Without End. It's by Glenda Green, and this is a quote of actually Jesus's, what Jesus is speaking about. And one of the things that's mentioned in I'm basically just going to read you from the book. It's really powerful. It says, "The power of the Holy Spirit is that it can shatter the illusion of separation and restore the soul to its simple wholeness. In the presence of the Holy Spirit, you are one with your Creator, and all that you are is rejoined in personal integrity. Wholeness is holy. Wholeness is healing. That is the essence of all miracles, physical, mental, financial, and social. Whatever's been torn apart comes back together into a state of wholeness. Love supports wholeness, and wholeness supports love. Through that common bond, love can heal anything." Very beautiful. Very beautiful.
Yes,
Love Without End. It's by Glenda Green. It's a book that was given to me by one of my colleagues that I absolutely love.
Because love is what the divine is, It is just love, and not a dispenser of love, but love itself, which is what we are, because there's no separation.
Yeah, one of the understandings I've been really reflecting on recently is the question of who are you? And in this book, Jesus answers to Glenda and says, who you are is love. And if you learn to be love, then you will be fully connected with the divine, rather than act love or try to create love or make love, but recognize that your essence is love, and that the way to bring that into the world is to be love. Wow, that's a really powerful understanding that, I'm just beginning to grasp, because you think of love and you think of the external, outward experience of, I love you, or I'm giving love to you, or I'm sharing love with you. That's all external. That's all separation. That's individuality. That's more, coming from the mind or the ego, if you will, rather than the essence of beingness, and beingness through the essence of recognizing that your beingness is pure love.
That's beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
That's beautiful, and I think that encapsulates it all. It's stunning. And Nathan, what you share, that you're, as you mentioned, you're a practical person, so you like taking things that you know to be true and applying them. And so how do you apply that, being love? How do you apply that in all parts of your life?
Well, it really takes me right back to kind of the end of what I was saying about self-reliance, is what that journey has done for me as interviewing and creating this book called Self-Reliance Mastery. It has put me back in touch with the earth. And any time that we're in touch with the earth, we're planting something, we're walking barefoot on it, we're sitting outside and appreciating the sunrise, which I do every morning. And I now take my 3-month-old son with me at 7:30 in the morning, and we watch the sunrise together and watch it come up over the mountain, and just embrace that warmth and that energy and the recognition of that infinite abundance that's coming from that little tiny sun from very far away. It's massive, and yet it's also incredibly small in perspective to the rest of the universe. And feeling that deep connection with spirit in that moment, in every moment. I think nature, and that's what self-reliance and sustainability does, is that in many ways it encourages us to reconnect back with our roots, to go back to the land. And anytime I'm with Mother Gaia, with the planet, with the earth, and I'm connecting with it, I'm hiking out in nature, I'm skiing, I'm up in the mountains, I'm, again, planting something, digging holes and putting trees in, and nurturing the growth of that fruit tree or that apple tree or that pear tree. I feel that deep connection to the divine, and I think that is something that we're missing as a society, because we're not growing our own food anymore. We're not doing these kinds of things that we used to. And if we start doing that, if you just start planting some herbs in your windowsill, or if you go get connected with a community garden, or you go and plant something in your backyard, get your kids involved in it, get your neighbors involved in it, spend more time outside in nature, especially barefoot. I was just talking with Mick Dodge about 20 minutes before this call, who had a show on National Geographic. He had a great series, one of my favorite series ever. It was called The Legend of Mick Dodge. And we were just talking about this barefoot kind of movement, or the Barefoot Revolution that's about to happen. It's this half-inch of rubber between our feet and the earth that's preventing us from that instant connection to the planet and to the divine all at the same time. And our science shows us that barefoot connection to the earth also gives us free antioxidants. It helps reduce inflammation in the body. It helps to create better immunity, and helps to fight off free radicals. So not only is there scientific validation, touching your skin to the earth actually improves the quality of your health, but I venture to say that it's a direct connection to spirit, and that it will improve the quality of your mind, your emotions, and your spiritual connection, your oneness to all that is. The earth is a perfect example of that. You spend time out in a forest, and you look at the interconnected web of all living things in that forest, you could find potentially thousands of different species and millions, maybe trillions of living organisms, especially when you start digging down into the soil, and how that web of life, from the fungal to the nitrogen-fixing plants that send the nitrogen down to the roots, to the trees that drop their leaves to produce compost and to help shelter their root system for the winter, and this incredible web of life that happens naturally. We can see how it's all in oneness. It's not competitive like we once thought. It's not trees competing against each other, or animals competing against each other. They're actually living more in harmony together in many ways than humanity is at the moment. And if we start modeling that, start living more self-reliant, more sustainable, spending more time outside, I can see that shifting for us, that all of us really naturally get back to our nature, to our roots, and automatically start living more in tune with spirit. It just happens all by itself. It's really quite beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. I love these examples you're bringing in of just interacting with the web of life, as you call it, being barefoot outside and just really connecting with nature, planting our own herbs and plants, and restoring our connection with the earth and with food, and just bringing all of that to ourselves and our family and our community. So beautiful, Nathan. Let me invite people that are listening in. If you've got questions or comments that you'd like to share, please do share them in the question window on Instant Teleseminar. Nathan, let's come over now to your documentary, because it's called The Search for Sustainability, and we can just talk about that briefly. I know you've got a program you're offering starting tomorrow. I think it's for 3 days, where people can watch this documentary for free for 3 days. We thought we might send that out with our thank you message to all of the, I think 14,000 that registered for this as part of the Living in Oneness Summit. Can you just tell us a little bit about The Search for Sustainability? I know it's a fascinating documentary.
Yeah, absolutely. The Search for Sustainability is the 12-episode documentary series. It's a web docuseries. We spent quite a bit of 2015 traveling the country and filming, and we released it in November of 2015 online for 2 weeks. We had over 120,000 views from all over the world, thousands of positive comments. People really loved it. And it was really a blessing for me and my family to be able to experience all the places and people and journeys and stories that we did in filming. We are releasing it free, a free replay series before it gets picked up by we have some contracts in place where it's going to be on certain online television networks and so forth. But from Friday, January 22nd through Sunday, the 24th, it will be free at the Search for Sustainability website. And basically through that journey of interviewing people from all over the country, I mean, politicians in Washington, D.C., to off-the-grid communities in Oregon, to schools in Arizona, schools that are doing next-level sustainability things, that have incredible transformational experiences happening with their students in communities that are really ridden with alcohol and drugs and poverty, and the children in those schools are going on to famous colleges and going on to being environmental educators and doing wonderful things, to permaculturists and biodynamic farmers and beekeepers. And what I did was, rather than one film for an hour, because it's very hard to try and get that much information into a single film, I said, why don't we do a series? So we have 12 films, basically, 1 hour each, 12 episodes. And each episode, we dive deeply into multiple facets of sustainability. So when people think of sustainability, they often think of the ecology, the planet, water, the earth, soil, food production, and so forth, which is a very important part of sustainability, right? But when I look at sustainability, I look at it in all aspects of our life. I look at sustainability in our health, in our politics, in our systems, in our communities, in our buildings, in our structures, in our societies, in our economics and finances, as well as the ecology, the water, the food, and so forth. And so each episode covers a specific facet of sustainability. And what we did was we looked at whether you're living in the city, like New York City, which we did quite a bit of filming there, or you're living outside the city in a suburban area, or you're living way outside the city on a farm or a ranch or in a rural area, what can you do? What small things or big things can you do to be more sustainable, to have a good impact on the planet, to really make a difference in your life, your family's life, your community's life, and the planet's life, really? And the first episode really kind of opens everything up. It kind of highlights a lot of the problems we're faced with, as well as starts discussing some of the solutions, and really opens up to what the whole series is about. And that's the first episode. Then the second episode goes into food production, and we go to health, we go to spirituality, economics, finances, politics, etc. And so that journey of filming and organizing and thinking about and spending months, in many cases even barefoot on the land doing a lot of these interviews, it's really taken my kind of every inch of our focus to a more specialized direction, and that specialized direction is sustainability, because sustainability is the way of the future. Sustainability means something that can continue indefinitely. Now, that can be applied to every aspect of our life. The relationship you're in, the way you're going about it, can that continue indefinitely? Yes or no? The car you drive, can that continue indefinitely? Well, all the cars we drive today, no, not without maintenance, not without repairs, and not without eventually breaking down, right? The food production system, our community environment, our social political systems, and so we look at what are the issues we're faced with, and then we go into many solutions. What are things you can do? What are, practical things you can do right now? Because, driving a Prius or an electric car and, watching how much water you use in your house and trying to conserve water and electricity and so forth, all those things help. But if you really want to make a difference, you've got to go to the next level. And that doesn't necessarily mean totally getting off grid for everybody, though for some people that's definitely what they want to do, and they can do that, and we've interviewed people who are living off grid. But it's just about taking that next step in that journey, because we all want a clean planet. We all want a pollution-free planet. We all want a better future for our children and the next generation. We all want this, to be able to walk outside and be out in nature and just enjoy this beautiful connection to spirit and to the land. And a lot of times we're hindered from doing that because of the way we choose to live, because of the technocratic society we've created, because of the need and demand for oil and the need and demand for cheap, quick plastic products that come from other countries. And so it's kind of rewiring our brain to start looking at life a little bit differently in a way that maybe could continue indefinitely for our children and for their next generations. So it's really a fascinating series that has changed my life, and I was really, really glad to see that so many people who had watched it, they also got that same impact in their life. Yeah, wow. That's fascinating. You shared, as you were beginning to respond there, Nathan, that as you talk about sustainability, that of course ecology, the earth, is a centerpiece here, but that all of the spheres of life are centerpieces, and brought in these others, politics, economics, etc. And that so much ties to something that we're also doing. We have an initiative called Oneness in the 12 Spheres of Life. We've been partnered with Barbara Marks Hubbard, Anna Marie Peters out of South Africa, who's our humanities team coordinator down there, is also a host of this program. We do a monthly program, and it's exactly this, where we talk about each sphere of life and how
what we're doing in oneness that is manifesting good things. Our call last month in January was with Ricky Byers-Beckwith, and our focus was the arts. And, of course, she is such an amazing leader in the arts. She's a singer-songwriter, and she leads the 200-person choir at Agape International Spiritual Center. And she's amazing. It was just such an incredible call. In fact, that was just last week. And then this week, or this month in February, our focus is economics and business. And John Thomas, who's our Conscious Business Initiative Director, and myself will be talking about a conscious business initiative that we announced on Global Oneness Day. It includes a declaration, a conscious business declaration with partners, the Club of Budapest, Goy Peace Foundation, and Fowler Center, and also a curriculum where we're training practitioners in conscious business. It's all based on our oneness with all of life. And it's revolutionary, because what the declaration and the curriculum say is that, of course, we are all one, and we need businesses that operate that way, not focus just on profit, but also profit's important. I'm a business person by background myself, but also planet and people and presence, which is the term we're using for the divine, that is manifested in all of life, presence, that we all have presence within us. So anyway, I just want to say, love that. It's certainly a way to bring practical application to oneness and living in oneness. Because if we just leave it at a conversation about how we live in oneness with the divine ourselves, and we don't go out into these different spheres of life and talk about in healthcare, in education, what does oneness look like? You mentioned, for example, Nathan, when you were talking about education, you were saying, you were sitting in a classroom. It was boring. You weren't really paying attention. I was listening to you thinking, boy, that was true for me too. I think there are so many boys and girls who sit in classrooms with these steel desks and things and a big board at the front of the room that are bored. Fortunately, alternative forms of education are surfacing, partly through all of our work together. But in the mainstream, it's still that kind of education. So talking about the forms of education that are surfacing, where we bring in spirituality, our oneness with the divine, each other, and all of life, healthcare like that, it's important. Let's see, we have, I shared before the call this hour was going to go fast. We've only got 12 minutes. I want to make sure, Nathan, that we get to Unify Fest, because I know this is planned down where you live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, later this year. It looks awesome. Can you tell us a little about it? We're going to come back to the documentary, by the way, too. We have a link to that documentary. We're going to send it out with our thank you email. This is that link to the documentary that Nathan said is available tomorrow, Friday the 22nd of January through Sunday the 24th of January. People are asking about it, and we will send that link out so you can listen in. But let's go over to Unified Fest, if that's okay, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Would love to chat about Unified Fest for a minute, because I've been producing conferences and expos for a few years now, and the more you connect to spirit, the more you connect to nature, the more love you have for all of it, the more compassion you have for all of it. When you see things that are unjust or just don't seem right, it's like you want to do something about it. And when I've produced events which tie in spirituality and health and healing and consciousness and sustainability, they're often produced in hotels or big venues like that, and at the end of the weekend, I literally have, in some cases, hundreds, and other cases, thousands of people who walk up and hug me, and they have tears in their eyes, and they're so grateful for the transformation that's happened through that weekend because of just the love that's at the event, and the workshops and the talks and all of that, especially some of our events in Sedona and San Diego and Los Angeles, and where this has just happened again and again. But at the end of the weekend, and I'm cleaning up with the cleanup crew, I see all the garbage and the waste and the trash and the pollution, and electricity needed and the oil it took to get everyone there, and all these, all this detriment that's happening to the earth. And I just, while I'm just feeling in complete gratitude, I'm also feeling my heart is really hurting. I'm just thinking, what can I do about this? So I started planning some time ago to eventually produce a very large festival that one of the core intentions was to actually leave the land better than we found it, to have an event out on sacred land that's a transformational festival that also teaches us self-reliance skills and sustainability skills, and is infused with really uplifting, encouraging, conscious music, bands, and then incorporating yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong ceremonies, and where this is really a 4-day ongoing ceremony of love and life and spirit and sustainability. So that eventually became called Unify Fest. And it's happening in Santa Fe, September 22nd through the 25th. It's a 4-day festival that is really going to leave the land better than we found it. We're going to have just incredible musicians, world-famous musicians coming from all over the world, playing, reggae, world music, uplifting, techno-type music, but more of the kind of spiritual, eclectical techno-type of music. And there'll be workshops. We have, for musicians, for example, we have Trevor Hall right now that we're signing a contract with. We're talking with Mick Dodge. He may be coming out and teaching some workshops. Again, he has a really famous show on National Geographic. And then we also have Stephen Dinan coming out from the Shift Network. And we'll have probably 70 to 80 world-class presenters, musicians, yoga teachers, Tai Chi teachers, ceremonialists, indigenous elders, really leading this high vibrational, spiritually connecting, life transformational 4-day festival, which is about unifying, so Unify Fest, unifying humanity to live more in harmony with the planet and each other. And it's just, every time I think about it, it just makes me so excited to know that I can be a part of an event that will actually leave a positive trace on the planet, not only in people's lives, but actually do something good for the land. And to me, I don't think, I don't think there's much else that I'd love to really focus my time on than that. And that is just really where my heart is right now. My team is so passionate about it, and we're just going 100%. It's quite a ways out in September, but, it's going to be really, really, really big and really amazing, and tickets will probably sell out. So we're just really excited about it, and that's at all the details are at unifyfest.com. We're getting ready in the next couple of weeks to start announcing all of our headliners, mini bands and musicians we've been negotiating with, and a lot of these guys do amazing work in the world as well. That's kind of what we're looking for, and who we bring in as our visionaries is people who are, who have a great message, but who are also doing things that are leaving a positive trace on the planet and a positive trace for our future generations.
Wow, sounds exciting. So that's September 22nd to the 25th, and Nathan shared you can go to Unify Fest. Was that .com? UnifyFest.com to
yes,
follow that? Okay, awesome. Yeah, it sounds exciting. All of that music, and then also inspirational speakers, and you mentioned you're looking for people that are really living the message, which makes it even more relevant. So that sounds exciting. We are getting close here. I've got some things I want to tell people about here before we close the call, Nathan. So just in 30 seconds or a minute, what's your call to action for people that are on a spiritual journey today? What's the message you'd like to leave everybody with?
The best message I think I can leave everybody today is go grab a shovel, go outside and start planting some stuff. Plant whatever you can. Plant fruit trees, herbs. Start making your medicine from your herbs. Start connecting back with nature. Go plant a little garden in your backyard. Go get involved in a community garden if you don't have a backyard. just get your hands in the dirt and get your kids' hands in the dirt. My daughter plays outside every day barefoot, running around with the dogs and the goats and the chickens, which we now have. And, I love seeing that dirt on her feet and on her hands, and she helps me to plant. And I know that is going to leave such a positive imprint on her life as she grows into a young adult. And I think many kids are missing that. So the very simple, practical thing I think everyone can do right now is go get involved in your food production and get involved with connecting back to the earth. It will transform your life.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Nathan. Thanks again for bringing that back around. I love it, just being barefoot and outside and really experiencing the divine in the earth and doing it with our kids and in our community. Just beautiful. And thank you, Nathan. I want to thank you so much. I just really appreciate you and the amazing life that you've had. As you shared, it's like 5 lifetimes. It's amazing, truly, that you went from that kind of beginning to the life that you have now as a conscious leader. I just want to honor you for who you are, and thank you for sharing that story with all of us here in Humanity's Team.
If you'd like to receive all of our new podcast episodes, please click on the subscribe button. To find out more about Humanity's Team transformational education programs and about how you can help support our mission, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org, where you can also sign up for our email list so we can let you know about our free online events and other news about what we're up to each week. And again, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review. Thank you.